Hey everybody, how's it going? Jesús Ramirez here. Welcome to the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge number 1. In this stream, I'm going to show you how to create a comic book drawing from a photo. First of all, I would like to say hi. I'm in beautiful San Francisco, California, and I would love to know where everybody's watching from. I see that we got people from Bali. We got people from, let's see, they're going to start coming up pretty soon. I just saw just that one. I do see some familiar faces though. I see Claudia from Print My Soul. There's, oh man, they're actually going kind of fast now. But anyway, I'll start reading some of the comments in a moment. But yeah, today we're gonna discuss how to turn a photo into a comic book drawing, and it's actually quite simple. So if you're starting out with Photoshop and you're brand new, don't worry. We're gonna use filters, which are just basically options that we click on in Photoshop to create this really cool effect. So you don't really need to worry about not knowing Photoshop. So this is the whole point of all these creative challenges. They're meant for beginners. So I'm gonna go slow and I'm gonna give you small digestible chunks so that you can understand the process on creating a comic book from a photo. And I'm starting to see a whole bunch of people here commenting. We got people from Iraq, New Jersey, Seattle, Virginia, India, Connecticut, San Diego, California, Georgia, a whole bunch of places. And there's Kata Jones. Hey, Kata, good to see you again. I think I see your name every time I'm on one of these streams. We've got people from Oklahoma. Good morning, everybody. Southern California, Ontario. How's it going? We got... I think that's Rod, Jesse, Sam. How's it going, guys? Before we get started, I just want to point out that if you're following along, I would recommend going into the live tab on behance.net, and there I am, obviously. And if I were to click on watch stream, you'll get to the page where you're probably watching this right now. And make sure that you click on this link right over here on the top right where it says register for the Daily Creative Challenge. And the reason that you want to do that is so that you have access to this big blue button here. Mine says you have already registered, but yours will read register if you haven't registered. And you want to register because once you do, you will get notifications on the Creative Cloud app. Let me show you how that looks like. If you bring up your Creative Cloud app, you'll notice a little bell on the top right, and that little bell will show you all the notifications, and you'll get a notification for all the daily creative challenges that we will be doing here. And you can scroll down and you'll see them all here. So this is the very first one, comic art. Each one of these individual boxes will be unlocked every morning at 8 a.m. Pacific. So this is where you'll be able to watch the video and also download the asset files if there's some asset files to download. For today's stream, we do not have any asset files to download, but for tomorrow we will. So at 8 a.m. tomorrow, you will be able to unlock this box and you can download the asset PSD to follow along with me. Another thing that I recommend doing is going into Behance and sharing any work that you create. So you can follow along with me, create something, and then share it on Behance. And do not forget to tag it with the PS Daily Challenge keyword. Make sure that you type PS in capital letters and Daily Challenge in lowercase. It is case sensitive, so remember, PS, capital letters, Daily Challenge in lowercase. Also, if you're following along, don't forget to go into Discord, and I don't have my Discord link up. I should have had it up, sorry about that. Let me open up my Discord page so that you could comment and give feedback to other people, and then submit your work so that you can get feedback on the work that you create. So right here on this channel, Design Feedback, you can upload the work that you create, and myself and other Adobe employees and people just like you can give you feedback on the work that you create. So check that out. It's on Discord, and I don't know if we're gonna get an overlay that shows the link. Do we have one? No? Maybe? There we go. bit.ly/PS Discord. This is where you go to join the Discord group so you can join the community of people just like you and submit the work, and I'll comment, and everybody else can give you feedback. We also have tips and tricks, Photoshop tips and tricks that you can leave for other people. And we have pro tips, right, where I'll be leaving some pro tips, and other Adobe employees could also comment with tips. So check Discord page out. Also, I'm going to be using Photoshop CC 2019, the latest version of Photoshop. If you do not have that, you can still follow along, but I highly recommend that you download the latest version because it gives you certain advantages that I will mention throughout the stream. So if you don't have it, you can actually download a 7-day free trial. You can just go into the Photoshop page on Adobe, or you can just type Photoshop free trial on Google and it comes up. And you can start your 7-day free trial of Photoshop CC so you can follow along with me with these creative challenges. And if you're ready to purchase, simply click on the Buy Now button, and there's different plans for Photoshop. Some of the plans are as little as $9 a month. And if you click on Compare Plans, you can see what the $9 a month plan gives you. And you can get Photoshop, Adobe Lightroom CC, Adobe Lightroom Classic, and you could also get all the mobile apps so that you can edit your photos with your mobile device. So let me just make sure that there's no questions in the comments before we get started. So let's do it. I'm gonna go into Photoshop, and I'm gonna go really, really slow here, and I'm going to explain what each of the filters that I'm going to use do and how they work. So you can follow along with any photo that you like. One important thing to keep in mind is that the settings that I use are relevant to this photo. So you can use those settings as a starting point and then fine tune them accordingly for your images. So remember, the settings that I use, you do not have to enter them exactly as I do. They're just what works for this image. Your images will have different options. So I'm going to work with this image here, and we're gonna make her into a comic book drawing. We're gonna turn this photo into a comic book drawing using filters. And the first step is to convert my background, this image, into a smart object. A smart object is simply a container that contains a layer or multiple layers, and we can apply filters, adjustments, and distortions non-destructively, which means that we have the option to edit them later. So I can right-click and select Convert to Smart Object, and that converts this layer into a smart object. And you can see this little tiny square here on the bottom right of the layer thumbnail. That means that that layer is a smart object. So I'm going to right-click on the layer and select Duplicate Layer to make a duplicate of this layer. And I can name it as I duplicate the layer. So I'll just name this layer Line. So this will be the layer that contains the line work of the drawing. In the original layer, I can just call it Color, because it will contain the color of the comic book drawing that we're going to create. So we have two layers, Color and Line. They're both smart objects, and you can edit them non-destructively. Also, it's important to note that when you convert a layer into a smart object and you duplicate that layer, both layers are linked. So if you edit the contents of one, the contents of the other will also change. And that's gonna become important a little later on, but I just wanted to point that out right now. So with these two layers, what I'm gonna do now is apply filters, and I can click in between each of these little panels and drag up just so that I can see a little more of that panel and have a little more space to work with. And actually what I'll do even better, I'm just gonna right-click on these panels and just close them because I'm not going to need them. And that's gonna give me more room, and I can click and drag up. So this is where I'm gonna be doing most of my work, in the Layers panel. So the first step is to work with the Line layer. Just to not confuse you, I'm just going to disable the Color layer by clicking on the eye icons, and you'll notice that the Line layer is the only layer that we're going to work with. And we're going to apply filters to create the illusion of a line drawing. So we're gonna look at her contours and try to create a line drawing out of that. The first step is to go into Filter, Filter, gallery. This is going to open up a gallery of filters, and I can zoom out so that you can see what each of these filters do. The filter that I'm going for is the poster edges filter. Once again, that's found in the artistic category. And if I click on that, Photoshop is going to posterize the image. So it's going to reduce the number of colors that are found in the image. And that is based on the posterization value that you use. A low value would just give you a few colors. A higher value would give you more colors. So I'm just going to leave it at about 2 for now. Feel free to fine tune your image accordingly. You just want to have large blocks of colors, almost like a vector drawing. Then you can adjust the edge thickness. So how thick is the edge? See that? See how I'm clicking and dragging and the preview is showing a live update of that adjustment? So I'm clicking and dragging on the edge thickness. See that? And then I think I'll place this at also 2. And then I can drag the edge intensity, how dark the edge is, and I'll leave it at 3 for now. Remember, all these adjustments are non-destructive, so if it's too much, you can come back and scale it back later. So we'll just work with these values for now. And I'm just going to press OK. So now we have, in this first line layer, we have a filter that created this cartoon effect. And this almost already looks like a comic book, but we're actually going to take it even further. We're going to push it further. And I'm going to apply another filter just to keep the lines of the image. So I'm going to remove the color and just keep the lines, just keep those black lines. So what I'm going to do is go into Image, Adjustment, Threshold. One thing I should note, if you're following with an older version of Photoshop that is not Photoshop CC 2019, this option will be grayed out because this option does not work with smart objects. So what you will need to do is just rasterize your layer so that it's a regular pixel layer. So right click, rasterize layer. The downside of doing that is that you won't be able to edit that adjustment layer. So that's another good reason on why the newest version of Photoshop is just a little better than the previous one, and you might want to consider getting the Creative Cloud. But anyway, so I'm going to click on Threshold. And Threshold simply makes an image, makes the colors in an image either black or white. That's it, black or white. And I can drag to the right to make the image darker, or to the left to make the image brighter. But see that? See, as I'm dragging to the left, you can already see that this is sort of like a line, like a pen comic book drawing. So you can fine tune the shadows, fine tune the highlights, and just try to get a comic book effect that you think might work with your image. So I'm just gonna click and drag, and in this case, I think maybe right about here, a threshold of 58 will be okay. And then I'll press the OK button. So when I zoom in and I'll click on the zoom tool, this icon here on the bottom left, that's the zoom tool. You can also press the Z key on the keyboard to activate it. When I zoom in, you'll see that it's looking like a comic book drawing, but at the same time, it's looking a lot like a computer generated image, and we don't want that. We want to give it more of a manual painted look. And there's a filter that we can apply in Photoshop that gives it that look of it being painted by hand. And that filter is called the oil paint filter. Now, before we use the oil paint filter, depending on your computer settings, you may have some issues. And I actually have this link here on Adobe Help X that tells you what to do if your oil paint filter is disabled. So if you run into that problem, here is a solution. And what I'll do is I'll copy this link and I'll place it on the chat. Let me just find the chat, and I'm gonna paste it right in there. So that link I just pasted on the chat will help you solve that problem if your oil paint filter is disabled. So I just wanted to point that out just in case you run into that problem. So I'm gonna go back into Photoshop and I'm going to run that filter over that image. Filter, stylize, oil paint filter. Filter, stylize, oil paint filter. And that's going to open up this window that's going to give us this effect that looks like as if those lines were painted onto the image. The one thing you want to do first is disable the lighting. The lighting gives the illusion that you're painting over a canvas, and we don't want that in this case. So you can just click on this lighting icon to disable it, and we can just adjust the stylization. It controls the lines, and the cleanliness, it controls the length of the lines. So you can just keep adjusting the cleanliness and the stylization until you get an effect that you're happy with. And then you can just press OK. I'm going to now double click on the hand tool. If you double click on the hand tool, the image zooms out and you can see the result. You can fit the image to screen. That's the technical term for it. And if you go into, I'll zoom back in because I want to show you something. Look at that cool effect that filter created. Really cool line artwork here. Really, really cool looking. So that's why we use the filter to give it that hand painted look. So now that we're done with the line part of the image, we're gonna work with color. So I'll click on this eye icon here to disable that layer, and I'll enable the color layer, and we're gonna work with that. And we're gonna run the same filters, but just apply a few different settings that are gonna just make the color stay and the lines disappear. So I'm gonna click on the color layer to select it. Then I'm going to go into filter, filter gallery, and we're gonna also use the poster edges filter. But this time we don't want any lines. We don't want the black outlines of the image, so we're just gonna remove those and just keep the color. And the way that you do that is by dragging two sliders to the left. We're going to drag the edge thickness to the left and the edge intensity to the left, and we remove the black outlines, but we keep the blocks of color. So it looks a little bit like a vector graphic almost. And I'm just going to press OK, and you can adjust the posterization if you want, but like I said, I'm just gonna press OK. And it creates that effect there. But again, just like with the previous filter, the result looks too computer generated for my taste. So I'm gonna run the oil paint filter again to make it look more like a hand painting. So you can go into filter, stylize, oil paint. And you can adjust the settings as you wish, whatever looks good for your image, and press OK. Actually, one thing, remember to uncheck lighting if you haven't done so, because as you can see, it creates that canvas effect, which is something that you may want to go for, but in this case, that's not what we want. So I'm going to uncheck that and press OK. So now we have a layer with color and the layer with the line work. I'm going to double click on the hand tool to zoom out and fit the image to screen so that we can see the whole thing. And what we're gonna do now is blend these two layers together. So we want to keep the black lines from the layer on top and remove everything else so that we can see the color from the layer below. And in Photoshop, we have these sort of like filters. They're more like algorithms that allow you to blend layers together. And one of those blending modes, one of those algorithms allows you to completely hide white pixels, but keep the black pixels. So we're going to hide the white pixels and only keep the black ones by using a blending mode. And the blending mode that allows us to do that is called multiply. So I'm gonna select the multiply blending mode, and you can see what happened here. We remove the white from the that layer, or we hid the white. The white is still there. We can bring it back if we want to, but we kept the black pixels to create that illusion there. So now when I zoom in, you can see the effect that we created there. See that? Before and after. So it creates a really cool looking comic book effect. As I said before, all these adjustments that we've been making are non-destructive, which means that we can edit them later if we need to. And the way that you would do that is by clicking on these down pointing arrows and opening up the filters. You can see the filters here: filter, gallery, oil paint, filter gallery, threshold, oil paint. So I can double click on the threshold label, for example, press OK, and I can adjust the threshold and then press OK again, and that updates on the final image. So that's something that you can use to fine tune the comic book drawing as you work. Once again, smart objects cannot have a threshold filter applied to them in older versions of Photoshop, only in Photoshop CC, so that's another good reason on getting the Creative Cloud. Another thing that I should mention, and this is just a little bit more advanced, is that you can actually edit how the filters are applied to the image by changing the luminosity of the images. And the way that works is by double clicking on the smart object, either smart object or both the same. They're both going to open up the same source image. So if I double click on it, I open it up in a new window. And just so that you can see how this works, I'm going to place the windows side by side so that you can compare. So I'm going to go into Window, Workspace, Window Arrange, 2-up vertical. So now I have on the right side the final image, and on the left side the smart object, the source image. And if I adjust the source image, it will update on the final composite. So what I'm going to do on the left hand side on the source image inside of the smart object, I'm going to make an adjustment. So I can select the quick selection tool, which allows me to select pixels, and I can select her hair, for example. So I'll select her hair. And if you select areas that you do not want to select, you can hold the Alt key on Windows, which is the Option key on the Mac, and click and drag to deselect certain areas. If you don't like keyboard shortcuts, that's fine. What you can do is click on this icon here in the options bar with the minus sign, and that will give you the same result as holding down the Alt key on Windows or Option key on the Mac. I just find that using the keyboard shortcuts is a bit faster. So let me just subtract from the selection a bit more and maybe add a little bit more of her hair. And what I'm gonna do now is go into this icon here, the half-filled circle, which is the adjustment layers. And if I click on levels, it will create what's known as a levels adjustment layer. And on the right hand, you'll see on this icon here, you'll see a layer mask. So it took the area that we selected and it created a layer mask based on that selection, which means that any adjustment that we make will only be applied to the area that was selected with the marching ants. So if I click on this icon here on the levels adjustment layer icon, and then on the properties panel, and I'm going to drag down so that we can see it. Properties panel is there. If you don't see it, you can go to Window, Properties. But on the properties panel, we can make an adjustment. So we can make her hair darker by clicking on this middle point. So I'm going to click on this middle point and drag to the right, make the hair darker. See that? Once I make that adjustment, if I save that smart object, watch what happens to the final composite. File, save. See how that was updated? So this is a way that you can go in there and start making some areas in your image darker to adjust the outcome of the composite. So another thing that you can do is with the brush tool, I can paint with white. White reveals, black conceals on a layer mask on this here. This is the layer mask. So notice how there's a little bit of white in there. The white that's in there is the areas that are going to be revealing that darkening effect. So if I paint with the brush tool and paint with white, see that? So I can just click on this icon here and it makes the foreground color white. That means that I'm going to paint with white with this brush tool, and watch what happens when I paint with white. And actually I'll make a bigger brush so that it's easier to see. And I gotta paint on this side. So you gotta be careful and make sure that you paint on the right side. So I'm gonna paint on this side. So I'm gonna paint with white here to make those darker. And if I save, this time I'm just gonna use the keyboard shortcut, Control S on Windows, Command S on the Mac. Watch what happens here on the right. See how that was updated? So you can go in there and fine tune your image as much as you like. So I'm gonna leave this for now. I'm going to close the smart object. And this is the final image. Don't forget to submit this image on the Discord channel. And that is found right over here on the Daily Creative Challenge. So you can share it on Behance, share it on Discord, and make sure that you add the PS Daily Creative Challenge if you share it on Behance. I hope that you enjoyed this first Daily Creative Challenge. Make sure that you submit all your challenges by April 15th. Tomorrow we'll be back again, and we're going to create an album cover using blending modes and the double exposure effect. So thank you so much for watching. My name is Jesús Ramirez, and thank you very much for the stream, and I'll talk to you guys again tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.